Right. So, Mark, yeah, let's go back to talking about the journal. And you had something very interesting before we started recording. If you could please repeat.
Okay. Yeah. So to recap, so Fred and I have been discussing, how to sort of make the journal expandably more useful. And one of the thoughts, and this was linked to discussion also about how we might use a virtual space to record some of the things we're doing and people's views on it. And I'd made the point that, well, we need to allow for the fact that some people will say, isn't this just, name your project management method done in VR? And to an extent, yes, but that's to miss the point, because what we're not seeking to do is to just move another known thing into a new space. It's more looking about how we can use the space to get more out of our understanding. So there will be an apparent similarity, but where this does take us is the possibility of sort of effectively a spatial hypertext without small s, small h, and looking at the interconnections that are hard to see when we have to put everything into a 2D surface. And that's potentially interesting. And I think the thing is to do this with a very sort of soft pair of hands, and not just to try and produce something without producing it with such force that we constrain it to a particular outcome that we don't really know, but we imagine, rather than saying, what are the emergent factors here? Because when I look back at, having finally found some content from Doug's NLS journal, what I'm seeing, given the limitations of the technology at this time, but effectively it's a kind of open file system. And they had all sorts of cleverness at the time, like the purple numbers and things to jump around. But we can make that a bit cleverer. And so when I think to the journal, I'm thinking, well, how do we tease apart the pieces so that it's not merely a linear journal in the tradition of diaries since way back when, but we allow exploration in more directions, because different people have different aspects of interest. And this is I think one of the big problems with a lot of systems we have at the moment. You either have to get with a program or you have to go do something different, because the necessary linearization that our systems have to get onto a 2D page mean that it, to a certain extent, can't hold too many trails at once. And I don't think we have to do that. The unknown part, and something that is been there in the edge of sort of hypertexty stuff for a long time, is, well, how do you write 4 trails? People talk about making trails, which is in their mind's eye probably a very nice set of box and line diagrams with lines whizzing all over the place. That is interesting, and you can walk around the boxes between the lines, but it's complicated. But in a sense that if you take the point, something like the journal, and you say, okay, there are a number of parallel sort of strands of thought or interest going on here. How do you link those up so you can walk those trails, such that when you move from one box to another in this sort of simple box and line idea, that you arrive somewhere with some idea of what's going on? But this is the bit I keep seeing being elided when people discuss this, because that's a sort of, it's an implementation thing. But I think that's us collectively lowballing it a bit. I think it does take some care. And having written a sort of large hypertext reference on a knowledge system for about 14, 15 odd years now, it's something I'm still grappling with.
Well, the difference between early hypertext and VR is obviously the large 3-dimensional space. So a space like that doesn't need to jump from invisible button to invisible location, of course. So how we can then take advantage of the space so we have things visible without making it messy is going to be a really interesting issue. But there's 2 things I want to highlight for you that's come up since you have been away. The first one is to really hammer home the point that in a VR room, the room is owned by someone. All the interactions are owned by someone. If Apple or Meta or Google or us make a VR room, you can only do the things in that room that the programmers have allowed you to do. And this is really, really crucial, because in a physical room, you can come in with a piece of paper, underline it, do whatever you want, turn it into a paper airplane and leave. In a Google Docs room, you can't turn it into a piece of paper, but the thing that's on the screen, you can only do what Google Docs allows you to, but you can still walk in another room and do a handstand. You own the room. And
what that says to me is and something that I see a lot in sort of the PK, the personal knowledge management space, which albeit is smaller than some of the things we're discussing, but you know, everything comes along and they're like a roach motel for data. You can get stuff in any number of ways. What you can't do is get it out in a meaningful fashion. And we're not at the state yet where there'll be a total rich interchange VR format. That will come, but I don't care to imagine just yet exactly what it is. But even at this early stage, speaking to your point of ownership, one of the things that means we also need to put to the fore is export is as important as import. People tend to start with, how do I get stuff in?
Sure.
And then you make something really fascinating and you can't do anything with it because, you know, you and two other people have this thing and no one else is particularly interested. So you have this wonderful thing you can't show anybody. And even if you have to extract it in a slightly different form, you've still created some value from the work you've done. So I'll write that into my jotted thing on, because I think so it's export more than import that becomes.
Yeah, but Mark, just to update you on where this has gone over the last 2 weeks, is logically, first of all, you need documents in there, but you also the space itself and arrangements of things in the space. So one thing that has come up that's been interesting is if you and I were in a VR space now and you hand me a document, that doesn't have information storage meaning really. So probably what you will need to do is do something like share the document on Dropbox or iCloud or whatever, and then I have access to it. Because otherwise in that room, all I have is the fidelity level access that you will graphically grant me. And Brandel brought up some interesting issues there that that could be of different levels, like a public access could be a gray sheet of paper and nothing else, or nothing, or a lot. So we can choose, depending on what kind of office space we're in, what people can see of what we're doing. They may have access to the same thing. So what I've been thinking about over the last few days, very concretely and simply, is that, of course, I think as a published format, Visual Meta should do a lot of the stuff we have discussed. But when it comes to a working format, I think we can use .liquid, because everything in there is JSON or list. It's nothing proprietary, nothing's locked away. Anybody can look at it. So that means that when you are in authorship mode, singular or collective, as alone or with other people, to actually open it up in a VR space is quite trivial, which was hugely interesting. And all we need to do is add a few documents in there for the additional views. And that can then be saved. So that becomes very interesting. And then when it's exported as a journal, it becomes visual meta type thing, and that's another thing. However, the meeting that I had with the National Institute of Health and the American one, they were very surprised and interested in the issues of academic documents in VR spaces that we're discussing now. And one thing I pointed out was that if I have a document that I brought in here, and then someone else gives me a document and I draw a line between them, where's the line? Is that in the room? Is it with this document and all of that? So I think these are the things we're starting to approach dealing with. So I think from our perspective, we need to now, and I think I'm repeating what you're saying, figure out how to publish the journal in a way that can be read linearly, of course, but also what is the most useful way for the reader to put it into multidimensional space, one issue of the journal, and then also all issues of the journal, and then finally that plus sources, right?
Yeah, because it's really interesting that. I mean, in a sense, because I can see lots of people, in a sense of lots of disciplinary representatives, as it were, in a virtual room saying, oh, well, it's just, the database people are saying, oh, it's just, it's another form of database or it's more triples. And I think it's more subtle than that. I mean, one of the main things is to not keep trying to do, not make our starting point current state of the art. There's an important distinction between needing to get from where we are to where we need to go, as opposed to completely hobbling ourselves by basically working only within the constraints of past technology. So to a certain extent, some of the things we're doing is because that's what we could do. Witness how long the page lives with us, although in many senses in the computerized, or certainly in the sort of Western world, so to speak, we've in many ways moved away from that. And the page has almost become a conceptual unit rather than a sort of physical thing. So I think there's a really interesting point in that, because, and I like the idea of thinking of just using Liquid as a sort of exemplar format, just to make the point, because if one of the things we're doing is able to show, look, the ease of effectively taking document structure, so what we were thinking of as these little faux paper pages, and turning into other stuff and back again, is possible. And I think what I've internalized from what Brandel said is, the main thing is you need a document structure. Ironically, you need an outline, but that's perhaps the wrong word to use. If you have a document structure that doesn't necessarily have to linearize as a specific outline, but if you have that structure, if you have a sort of an HTML-ish type thing, a DOM, document object model, then you can do all sorts of clever stuff. And that to me is interesting, because then it says, well, how does this fruitfully butt up against the sort of the database engineer's view of the world?
Yeah, so on that point, what I would very much like as a dream would be that we publish our journal as visual meta with enriched visual meta. It has all this stuff. And at the same time, the original manuscript format in locked form, perhaps, is also published to a best accessible public thing, G Drive, whatever, it doesn't matter. And that the visual meta is aware of this. So that for as long as that manuscript form is available, because obviously it's computationally much easier to deal with, we will use it. But if it disappears, it degrades, but it doesn't remove any of the basic metadata.
Yeah, it's another interesting thing, actually, that occurred to me, and maybe in a sense, this is what you're saying, like misunderstood, but the other interesting thing is, thinking in terms of the body of what's in future of text, is if I follow through your idea of effectively, enhancing visual meta, effectively for the environmental necessities, it will be interesting to be able to, therefore, as I mean, you can have feature text printed out. We do it as an EPUB. But effectively, and I guess, I don't know what format, but probably using something based around Liquid. Let's worry about what we call it, because that just makes people sort of start to say, I won't do things. But just imagine for a moment if you can take that into a VR space. And I think we've got, I mean, because of the way it's been brought together and some of the thinking behind it, it's sort of within striking distance. And it then allows us to do some quite interesting things. So, for instance, the David LeBeau, the guy who's doing a highliner.
David LeBeau.
David LeBeau, sorry, yeah. Something I've sort of had pegged mentally to sort of get back to at some point is that he, bless him, has spent a lot of time doing a sort of thematic analysis of the thing. And the interest to me is not so much whether I agree with the thematic analysis or not, but what I can do with it. Because at the moment, I've got something that you can use in relationship to his tool, which is why he did it. But if I'm looking at the...
All right, just pressing a button, I'm still here.
Yeah, sure. if there's a constellation of information, articles, call it what you will, within a VR space, a bounded VR space, which is the future of text. What I see his data set as doing is giving us effectively another sort of layer of metadata that might allow us to sort of effectively see trails. It's the interconnections. I mean, to me, that's what spatial hypertext allows. I mean, in another channel, it's very interesting. I've watched a thing going on where someone's trying to do analysis of. It's a terribly common thing. I mean, I don't know what field. It's obviously something where bad things are going on, so they're a bit cagey about what it is. But it's people, you know, who belongs to what role do they have in which organization, and they. Tool that happens to be Tinbots he wanted to use, and they're having a bit of a hissy fit, but because they said, well, look, my job, I just put the information in. It's supposed to show me, you know, magic underpants gnomes phase. It's supposed to show me all the clever stuff. And I was trying to say, well, no, actually, it's not quite as simple as that. You know, what you've created, what your starting point is a box and line diagram where you had to put all the information on the page, because if it's not on the page, you can't see it. But you want to do a more subtle analysis, which means you need to dial stuff in and out. But what you do need to do is you need to capture all the information. So you need to start thinking with a bit of abstraction, painful as it may be. I mean, it's not hard. I don't think it's hard to do. I don't think most people struggle with it. What they struggle with it, what they dislike, is having to do it. There's a distaste to pulling that out. But that sort of structure, just as in the way it manifests then as visual meta, is the richness, and in essence, it's so close to what the SEM web people wanted, but they took such an engineering sort of standpoint that you end up with this thing that very few humans in the room can understand, which is a tragedy to my mind. And so again, having these more human-friendly sort of spatial hypertext spaces is important to me, because I think that's one of the ways we sort of bridge the gap between the really hard edge engineering and the associative thinking we have. And I was minded, I need to, that's on my list of things to get. I see Ben Schneiderman's just a book out called Human Centered AI. And in one way, I mean, as someone slightly unkindly said, well, you know, it's a couple of slides really, but it's useful to have as a longer recitative in a book, just to make the point that, you know, actually, who's in charge here? Are we hurtling towards a thing where AI makes all decisions based on God knows what, or do we rethink it in terms of no, what it's there to do is to dial up the things that we can define, you know, that they can then be done in a rote fashion, and improved on the way. I mean, the scary point is we're a long way from general AI, but we're trying to pretend we have it, and we keep seeing some mistakes being made. It's good at what it does, and you know, it's a real shame that we're not using it for what it's good at. But again, you know, if I map that back to what we're looking at and virtual environment, and by inference almost a virtual hypertext, you know, where and how does that help?
I think let's go a little practical. Shall I share screen and show?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So just start with this. This is an author document, the current version of our journal. Control, show package contents, and here we are.
Yeah.
So we have the RTFD is the actual content. Just like that.
Yeah.
So that's nice and clean. Then we have glossary. There's the glossary.
Yeah.
Phrase, entry, identifier, all kinds of goodies.
So that's JSON, yeah. Yep.
So yeah, we have a couple of JSONs, a couple of p-lists. This is, what was this again? Yeah, this is citations.
Yeah, and the
How
P
much
lists are essentially XML
Yeah,
by any other name. Yeah.
yep. So that's it. Simple stuff.
Yep. Yep.
So our current issue then in author looks like this. Hang on, I'm going to move the control thing away. I haven't done anything on the map at all. But we have an introduction that you and I need to agree with, which is basically boilerplate, welcome, and then how to read. And hopefully soon it'll be how to read in VR, which will be amazing. And then we have a little bit of the team. And then we just start with articles. So the way it is now, it doesn't have any external articles really. There is one guy on the Twitter who was introduced to us. No, actually, I think, anyway, so he has written something here, but I don't have access to it. And I don't want to bother wasting our time scraping it. Maybe we could. Oh, for God's sake.
Well, at this point, as an initial thing, it can always just be linked to. I mean, you know, unless we think the sort of the whole of the sort of the web as we know it at the moment is going to end suddenly, and have to avoid such dystopian view.
Okay, well, so this is a real article. So the way I would take it in from a .doc or whatever, let's actually just try.
Okay.
So the structure of it is these are all the same levels now. Maybe we change a bit, but resources and news, that's all little bitty things.
Yeah.
But so, and you see the sub ones here, like this is Adam's experiment. But because Brandel chimed in, I've made that headings, because if I command click on a heading and click then show option, I have set Adam as the contributing author.
Yeah.
So if people copy from that and cite, they'll be citing Adam and not me or Brandel, for instance. Right?
That's a really good sort of point to capture to sort of surface. I mean, and I know you've mentioned it before, but it's interesting. This is something coming up in a number of sort of things I've got figures in. Is it's good to see the tides coming in about this fact, which is about. I suppose you might say generous citation, which so it's not about controlling. It's not about saying, putting your arms around saying, here is my private walled garden. I own this. It's about saying, this is where these ideas come from. And if you need to know more about these ideas, you might need to go and look at that or talk to this person, which is incredibly important.
Yeah, exactly. So here I have editorialized a little bit.
Yeah.
And then because we're now looking at the Bob Horn mural, so this stuff is just scraped from Wikipedia as well. But you know, this is a screenshot of the video.
Yeah.
And then here, Brandel, there's, you know, you see the different things, right? And here is the transcript of his presentation.
Yeah.
Adam replies, etc., dates. So trying to put the links in as usefully as possible. And this is Fabian doing the first visual meta in VR.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of amazing. So that, and then, yeah. This is Fabian putting up actually the code he used for this.
It's very interesting to see that picture there of the person looking upwards in their Oculus, which is what I find I have to do sometimes to get focus. Which is, it's a lensing effect. It's not, you know, it's sort of.
Oh yeah, that's an important point actually. Even though I have the lenses in now, just like you have to kind of lift it up a bit. But also I find it's just not that pleasantly focused for me. I just can't get it right. So what improves vision, of course, is motion. So that's why I think we should do exactly what you said, focus on showing relationships and allowing people to move around, because you're not going to put on your headset with current technology to read something. Of course not. What you're going to do is want to see lots of stuff in a space, see how it relates. So when you move your head, it's easier.
It's a really interesting thing, because I think back to, there was a discussion and thing the other day, and I think it was Peter Wasilka, we were talking about, you know, treadmills and things, and I'm thinking, okay, I get it, and it sort of seems exciting, because one of the sort of freeing things is I can be in my tiny sort of, you know, cubicle house or something, and I can walk the world in VR. But I think we got that slightly wrong way around. In that, where the technology is at the moment, the one thing I've found from playing with it that I wouldn't have guessed is that, albeit due to technical limitations that may or may not go away, but are in the here and now, actually, when I want to see something with any fidelity, what I have to do is I have to basically bring it to me. So in other words, I can't move my head to look at a thing over there. I actually have to sort of move. I have to move, or it has to move, such that we're, and to a certain extent, it's probably easier to move it using these than it is to try and sort of basically map us stumbling around our drawing room or something.
There's
in
another
games, I can see it's very different, but in a data space.
No. It's a really important point you're making, and there's another aspect to it. That is, if you walk, you get queasy, more likely. But if you pull something towards you, even though it's actually exactly the same, you don't get queasy.
Yeah, and it's just a space. And also witness the thing that was in Scoble's article, that his nestled in his long peroration there was the fact that probably for a while anyway, you're still going to be doing your important interactive work sitting down. The difference is that instead of, I'm, for instance, looking at a pair of screens and my laptop to one side, now in an augmented sort of VR space, whatever you would want to call it, I might be looking at 6 screens, not all of which are physical. And that's the kind of augmentation that the workspace might want, or I might want to see my screen as a 100-inch screen or something. So that, because it's a really interesting thing, again, looking at people trying to do visualization work and running out of screen. So their mental screen has no limit. Their physical screen is very small, and they struggle because they want to have the fidelity which in their mind runs to the edge of their imagination. But you either got to make it so small you can't read it, or big enough to read and you can't see the whole thing. So there's another really interesting aspect there about how the virtual space can help elide that.
Yes, but
Mark, so then it becomes a navigation thing.
Mark, that you can do in immersed today. You can have 6 screens.
Yes, yeah.
And it's really, really easy, and it works really, really well. The thing is, it's still flat. It doesn't take any advantage of the environment, but it's really, really good. Right, so let me just show you the next step. So I've copied the author's name, Omar. Mm-hmm. Go back to author, and style-wise, well, first thing I do, command click. The Zoom interface is over. Click show options, click plus to contributing authors and paste.
Yep. So
now whatever is clicked until there's a new author will be that. So then I put his name, italic. That's it.
If I just so I'm up with the hunt, because I haven't played with this last feature, is if you were to add another author, does Osmar Rizwan become a list, or are they all? So if you put yourself just for a moment as another contributing author, just to see.
Yeah. So when you then do copy from this section, it'll be authors. Yes.
No, I was just thinking how it if you literally put your name in.
It's not doing anything on this. This is completely separate.
Yeah, no. What I was wanting, I'm just interested to see how it looked. If you were to add yourself as another, just how it looks in the author visualization.
Like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything.
Because, well, oh right. So you actually added Omar Rizwan. So that's sorry. Okay, sorry. I thought that was added by the contributing author bit. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So to add an author, you command click on any heading, click show options, then you click plus and you write the author's name.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So
an interesting thing, sort of just as a sort of mental side note, is to a certain extent that it might be useful down the line that if that actually you'd surface that on the ground. So if you're adding that, that's something you probably want visible in the surface layer as well.
No, probably not, because it's really for editors like you and me. Normal users would never use this. So if we have a way to show people that if you are an editor and you want to use author, we give them a little guide, but I don't want to give too much control.
Okay, so it goes into the metadata of the document. So if I'm looking at it, say in a liquid VR space, I would be able to pull out that constellation of contributing authors. And I'm not trying to
No, it's a
say exactly how, but let's just say the possibility is there that I would be able to somehow see this, this constellation of people and how they interact by way of, for instance, it might be something as sort of rinky-dink as just a graph that's showing how all the different people connect through what nodes, through what works.
So now I've exported it.
Yeah.
If I now copy this text.
Yeah.
And then I go into author and I paste.
Yeah.
It's Omar Rizwan.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And just so I understand again, so
if I now go to here, which I have written, copy, go to author, lower down, paste, me.
Yeah. And the formatting, of course, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm deliberately sort of playing the idiot here. So when I see this and I see sort of Frode 2022, actually that's just within the document. That's just a visualization of citation style. What's powering that essentially is metadata. So in other words, it's not a thing that literally says, parentheses Hegland 2022 inside, which many people are sort of that literal. So do you see what I mean? Because these are again good things to pull out.
In author, the citations are always shown author date in brackets, but on exports, you can choose the style.
Yeah, but what I mean is underneath it. So when you go into your package and you look at the information that's giving you, that's allowing author to put it on the page in that form is actually richer, is it?
Yeah. Well, you have this, right? So here it is.
Yeah. Exactly. So and that in itself is extensible. I mean, it's down to people to put more in, but the process. I mean, the reason I keep bringing this up is that I suppose, having been banging my head against things where systems don't think interchange, where a lot of authors, a lot of software design, especially in the knowledge space, is all about import. Make it easy to put stuff in my tool, but how the hell do we get it out? Now, the useful thing here is, because of the way the data is being captured, it is actually easily exportable. Forget the format as such. The fact that you can do it at all is actually very important.
It goes into the visual meta. So now you and I have to decide on something. So here is dragging the first image. Actual privilege. Okay. So for some reason he's called it figure 1.
Yeah.
And he's given it a URL. So if I now drag it in, I have to decide, okay, so the author name is easy. So when I now click on this, it'll ask me the author name. So I just like Omar, paste the last name. I guess I just call it figure 1. Where do we then put the link? I can always change this, but.
Well, I mean, okay, so if you, I mean, in modern citation, the problem is so much of the citation thinking seems to have predated, dare I say it, the web. I mean, God, and that's what, 30, 40 years old or whatever. It's ridiculous. But nowadays, whether it's DOIs or just URLs, and then URLs have a fragility, I know, but a URL, at least one URL, ought to be part of the general facility of
right.
citation.
Mark, so here's the thing: if I give this, if I make the image title the URL, it does actually work.
Cool. Yep.
So we can do that.
I mean, there are two things. Yep. There are two things at play here. so in fact, the linkage part is working in terms of your document. So the citation network metadata is working. The bit that's potentially more ugly is the sort of visual thing, because I'm probably thinking the same as, yeah, do I really want to see that there? Possibly not, but we haven't been given anything else, or I mean, otherwise someone's got to capture that tweet and have the link behind it. In other words, it's got to have, you give it anchor text, which is possible to do.
Well, what we have now is we have, so this is the image, the tweet is the image, right? And then we have, oh, fuck, figure 14. Okay, hang on. That's an export thing. I have append figure to images. Okay, remove that.
Yeah, I wonder what that was.
Yeah, so there we go. Okay, because I changed the name. It hasn't done it yet. Okay, now it's done it. Sometimes I have to click on this twice. It's just a bug. So now it's figure 1, HTTP, blah, blah, blah. Just going to call this one test. So table content against text. All right, so here we have figure 1 and the link. So he refers in his text to figure 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So that means even though he's not the first figure in this document, it's the first in his article, so that's fine. So this looks good, right? Plus the link is live, even though it's just a title.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that the journal is in a sense an assembly of, it's a document of documents to form. So having the fact that the referencing there is only within the document doesn't strike me as odd. Out of interest, that's just an aside, where you turned off the add images effectively to the figure count. If you put another thing after this, does it pick up the 14 count? So the next, so I can see the logic. So you set it so you want everything to number all the way through, so you can find it. Yeah.
So yeah, let's just drag the second one across. And I'm going to cut that name, call it figure 2. So Omar, well, what is his name? Such a bizarre name. Rizwan, right? Yeah. Cool name. Oops. That's a mistake. I'll fix it. Figure 2 space edit. Oh, it's all in one as well. That's not good.
Is it 2 A's or 1? Yeah.
Should be 1. So why did I do 2?
You didn't. No, you did before, but you fixed that when you retyped it.
Okay, it's fixed itself now, right?
Do you want a colon after the figure 2? But doesn't really
matter. What do you think? What would be most elegant? This is exactly why we're doing this together. Maybe.
Well, I would either put a colon or a full stop simply to indicate that the figure 2 is a separate substring to what follows.
The only reason I'm thinking about the colon is we have a colon after HTTPS.
And you were thinking it in terms of that literal string being.
But okay, let's try that. See how it looks. Yeah, this is fine, isn't it? And then here we'll do the same here.
Yeah.
Figure 1, figure 2. And he has some inline links which do not get exported as live. So I'm going to have to, sorry, I'm going to have to spell them out or make them endnotes.
But this is all, in a sense, this is all important and useful stuff, because in a sense that, so part of the transposition cost is that things that ought to just transpose by, for instance, copy paste don't. And I'm not, presumably that's because the RTF, actually I'm surprised because I would have thought, you're using current Apple frameworks. I thought it auto detected URLs, but I guess that's something that has to be enabled. And I would say I already know.
What did you say?
Sorry?
What did you say using Apple framework?
Well, I came across this tinderbox is that which is just using the Xcode framework. So if you paste in some text, it will try and auto detect URL. So if it's a full URL with an HTTP or well, certainly with an HTTPS protocol at the front, it will detect that and turn it into a link. The problematic part of that is it turns it into a link within the RTF layer of the text. It doesn't, so more cleverness is needed. So in the tinderbox thing, the problem was you'd have an apparent link in the document, but when you looked at the text, you had a clickable link that went somewhere. When you actually looked at it from an informational perspective within the document, you didn't see a link because it only resided hidden in the literally in the RTF thing. So there's some interesting problems like that to mull through, which is why I say auto detection of URLs is not great. Plus the fact you get crazy stuff like it auto detects domains. So there's a bit of one of the bits of macro code in Tinderbox is something at, which is basically saying list item, whatever. So you something .at. And so that the auto detection will think, oh, right, that's an Austrian domain, right? I'll make that into a link. So you have to, it's a thing. It has to be turned off. And of course, the very people who have most trouble by this either can't or won't use the available controls to turn things on and off because, again, clever as computers are, they just can't guess this sort of stuff. They don't, computers can't yet really read our intent or syntax, our syntax.
Indeed. So we're almost done with these. Not the most exciting work to be doing with this. So he already had it formatted for us, except he used a colon instead of a period. So easy, and then we'll do 7. I think that's the end. Yeah. Okay, he has specific footnotes, which of course we call endnotes. We're going to have to do that, and we're going to have to do that for the links as well, I think.
I mean, at this point, presumably the links, of course, his links aren't, you'll have to add those because they are using anchor text. So the links are not,
so here's his
it's a target link, it's not self-evident.
Yeah, so the first one is this one. So copy that, and we go to, see, this is why they need to write it an author, for gosh darn sakes. So there should be a, where was that one? Because it didn't, okay. Plain text, yes, you can say, oh, here it is, here's the one. So all I do is I do Command E and I paste, but that had a URL in it by itself. So that's even more annoying, but that's okay. So I copy link and I paste that below, that should work. Then we got to find 2.
So out of interest, I'll let you finish what you.
Yeah, I'm listening.
You missed a sentence off the end there, by the way. When you were copying, you missed the last sentence of footnote 2.
Thank you.
No, you done it again.
What's going on? Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's amazing how squirrely text selection is. I mean, one of the reasons I hate Word is every time I select something, it decides it wants to do a slightly different selection to what I've actually selected.
Yeah, but you were saying something else.
Well, I was thinking, okay, so you've got those links, but how are you, can your endnotes, so at the moment, your endnotes can't support a link in the endnote text?
Can't they? I can't remember.
I don't know, it's just the way you've done it. You've added the URLs in there, but is that a precursor then going back in the endnote and saying this selected text will use this URL?
Hang on, let me just
Sure.
put that in, and then we will experiment, because that's kind of important. So 3 has, sorry, the Zoom thing. Okay, so I copy this link. Take the Zoom thing away again. And okay, so all the endnotes are now done. Now we're going to have to do the in-body link. So among the words, we're going to have to give an endnote to. Where is that? Among the words is before.
Paragraph 3.
Yeah. Among the words, here we go. Boom. Command E, paste, done. Then we have computers were slow.
Is there any, do we get any control in author on the paragraph spacing?
No.
Because I was looking at that, I'm
You're
finding
making
it
it
quite hard to
wider, you
pick up.
mean?
Sorry, I'm finding it quite hard to pick up the paragraph breaks because it's the same spacing between the lines and the paragraphs, or it's not much different. I'm that's not to gripe. I mean, it's just a practical thing.
So the way that I write academic documents now is paragraph is an indent to save space. So if someone does, you mean like this?
Well, but that's old-fashioned typewriter spacing. I mean, the way I understand you'd normally do it if you're using a print device is effectively you would maybe use a line and a half, but you know, you'd use whatever you need. But I mean,
I wouldn't. Well, no, that's just a waste of space, isn't it? I mean,
no, well, space doesn't cost us. It's ease of reading. The point is that you see that is laid out, and I know you and indenting will help slightly. But I find it much easier to read, especially if you're scan reading, because what your eye picks up is the pattern difference. So you're picking up slightly more space, because if also when it's spread across the page, you may not necessarily be tracking the left margin. You may be tracking the center line. Yeah,
but no, I'm not going to do that, because that would be too much worry. It's already a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to make the text appear and selection.
No, that's sort of totally unrelated to this. It was just an observation about.
But what I have done is the indent. At least that helps a little bit for the new paragraph. So just look at what he considers a paragraph.
Yeah.
So we've got to do copy link here. So I'm struck by the figures are the important parts. Boom. Okay, it should be done with this soon. Then we can start experimenting. Copy link. So easy.
Can't you? I suppose the other question is, so you can't select the word easy and make it a link to that?
I can.
Yeah.
But it won't work.
Because?
When you export to PDF, the links that aren't visibly shown are not rendered. Author doesn't have the capability to render a link. All it does is produce it as plain text, and it's the reader application that makes it a link.
Okay.
Which is not ideal.
Okay, fine. No, I mean, again, it's not a point of argument. I just literally so I understand where the constraint lies.
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm not very happy about that. However, in the long run, of course, it's good. in the sense that, hang on, fields even programming. Yeah, because links like that are not, you know, they're kind of hidden, aren't they?
Yeah. So is the paragraph on a piece of paper? Surely that's a paragraph should be indented, because otherwise not indenting implies it's part of the paragraph preceding the image. Is how I read the pattern. So if you scroll up the page up a bit.
Oh, sorry, on this one.
Yeah. So on a piece of paper in brackets, because it's not indented, that's the remainder of the paragraph that preceded figure 3 is how I read that.
Yeah, my style is that only indent inside. I don't indent the start of a paragraph.
But those are two separate. Yeah, see, this is so because in a sense paragraphs are actually quite important, useful chunks. So I understand the thing that at the beginning under a heading, but a figure is not a heading. It's just an interstitial bit of ornamentation as regards the text. So there's no reason that it's a confusing thing to do, because if a non-indented paragraph implies this is the beginning of the whole section, then not indenting a paragraph after a figure is implying that the figure is a heading, which is not. That's all I mean, that's why it confuses me as a reader.
Why don't we make it render it and then see how it looks rendered? Just trying to get these links in, which are so boring to watch as well. So many damn links here, dude. What? So scrolling. What was that?
Great.
Yeah.
You're about 4 words long. No, up one line, 2 words right.
Yeah.
End of line 2. Yep.
See why you're going to be better at this than me. Haha.
Unfortunately, for a host of reasons, I've done sort of tons of this sort of stuff over the years. I mean, well, that's all the information plumbing stuff, because often, you know, theoretically there is a thing to do it, but the thing does not exist, or you're going to spend more time writing it than we will doing it. Line 3, halfway long. Oh, yeah.
So now we're going to delete this. So it looks reasonable. And, so here, video games. Yeah, see here, this is the, let's look, the iPhone and video games. Look at his original. Oh, he's got to. Yeah, the iPhone video
Yeah,
game.
there you go.
So
Yep.
that's number 3, and there's a link there to Mario.
Yeah.
The tweet is Shigeru Miyamoto. So where did I see that? Here it is. P. Yeah, so that works. A readable piece. I'm a bit tempted to go in and get rid of these 3 dots, but that would be messing with it. So now the only things I would do myself is like here, easiest typing. That can probably be fixed by less space above image number 2, right?
Where's that?
Hang on. Because yeah, this bit was kind of hanging off. Let's do Homer 2. Maybe I send it to you now and you can play around with it.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to get just get fixed in my mind. So because I think the thing I got cross-threaded before in terms of what exactly is the journal, because there's the FTL website, which I said this is my misconception was that the FTL website was effectively the journal.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my thinking is the FTL lab it was messy in the beginning, but considering how few people in the community is interested in the journal,
yeah,
I think the FTL lab is just our place of saying, hey, we're doing work VR text.
Okay, cool. So that's fine. So in essence, our journal in the NLS sense is this document.
Yes.
You just okay. That's fine. Good.
However, going back to what you said much earlier today, it is also it's more conceptual model. So in on the FTL lab, if you go to publications, it takes you to the future of text.
Yeah.
On the future of text, there is the book series, but also the journal, which is
not. Oh no, that's fine. Yeah. So it was going to be my next question.
Hang on, yeah. But the thing that is important related to what you said earlier, all our transcripts, chat logs, and video are here.
Yes. Now, so does the journal reference those?
Not necessarily directly yet, but it means that in terms of our VR world, as we're going into it, we can decide how to bring these together because some of these transcripts are very, 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 very long.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not proposing. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't thinking that. I'm thinking back to this idea. So I'm sort of going back to Doug's journal, and this idea that effectively what it was a form of it was an intermixed note-taking system and file system, in the sense that some things were external, but you know, and given the technology at the time, but basically they were saying this thing happened this time, you know, key facts, sort of more here was the way I sort of think of it. And in a sense, this is what we're doing. It's richer because we have tools that are richer. But as you rightly say, you don't want to go and plonk every transcript into it, because the journal document, it's, you know, that document then becomes far too big. So one of the things the journal will need to have then is a pointer to the journal index, sorry, the transcript index on, you know, the meetings. And that's an index page I'll probably need to make for the FTL labs, because it's the conceptual nature of the blog is it doesn't need that, because
okay, hang on, let's get to that in a second. I
yeah.
just want to show you one specific thing.
Yeah.
So we have a huge glossary, not huge, but big enough.
Yeah.
That's kind of building up. So now I'm going to add Omar because he's a contributing guy. So I select him, I do Command D for define. And because I don't have a bio from him, I just scrape his his Twitter thing. So I'm going to do Twitter, and then I'm going to do a link to his website.
Yeah.
Make sure it's not a shortened one. And that's it.
Yeah.
So now he is in there like that, and that means, I know you know, but let's just check that nothing's wrong. So someone now reads about him, and they say, who is he? Command F. The definitions on top.
Okay.
We should develop a more interesting way to do that. And we do have defined concepts show up in Reader like this as well. Plus you can do things like...
So what I'm seeing out of this, and I need to think about, is that there will need to be some, in terms of adding content, there are probably some unit tests that I need to think up. I'm cribbing a computer term, but I don't mean it quite in that formulaic sense. In that, okay, so for everything we add, there are a number of predictable things that will need to happen. So for instance, what you've just done, we need to know that this person, if they're not already defined, so it's more than just sort of adding the notion of them as an author. We need to make sure they're defined in the glossary and things. That's a matter of sort of really working it through. Does this journal, when does this journal?
At the end of each month.
It's monthly journal. Okay, so that's what size constraint it. Yeah, so it doesn't get too big. Yeah, okay.
And the version, the name is the version number. 1 is the first year.
Yeah.
1.1 month 1, 1.2 month 2, and so on. Just
sure. Yeah.
So I just want to show you in Reader a couple of things we can do now. Of course, we can fold it into an outline.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we can do Command F to see all the occurrences of AR. That, you know, whatever selected text has this on top. We can also do Command Shift D to show all defined terms with headings.
Yeah.
Isn't that quite cool?
Yes. So when we've, I think, I think this is something also interesting to turn into a little thing, but I think we should do a little more of this, just to sort of bed down the things we're doing before rushing to spend time making a little movie. But I think that would be another interesting interrupted thing. So one of the things I'll look at also with the journal is making sure that part of the sort of meta text is saying, okay, you know, this is called journal because it's year number, month number, and where you, so if you're reading journal, you know, 4.2, how do I find journal 3.6, which presumably will probably be the FTL index page at this point, because
my dream, I'm very glad you mentioned that. I'm very happy you will write that. Thank you. Because the dream is that these PDFs will know about each other somehow.
Sure, but given that we're not,
I mean, exactly.
I'll phrase it in terms of, I mean, as the sort of, as the technological affordances improve, ideally the documents will be self-referencing. But you know, if for any reason you can't find it, the sort of the fallback web place to find the listing will be, and we'll make a place where that is. Yeah. Even if it's a case that you go to year 3 and then you go to a year 3 listing, because again, all those listings get out of order. I mean, I've got one of my many to-do jobs is another forum is to take 3 years of weekly meetings, which have been created as one long list, and break them out into 3-year-long ones, because no one wants to scroll through 150 listings.
Exactly, Mark. So in this case, VMID will be part of it, and how to search, how the naming convention will be. So if you want to write an introductory paragraph or 2 or more on that, that would be fantastic.
Cool.
Put that in issue 2, part of our future boilerplate. By the way, this view shows named entities, so they automatically show names.
Yeah.
So here you can see Tom Cruise, Ted Nelson, but that's automatically extracted. Command Shift N. It's so cool. We have a few of these views there.
Yeah, and I think I probably need to explain. I probably need to explain why the URLs are surfaced, just simply so that.
Sure.
Again, I think we need Yeah, it's partly a thing of understanding that people are going to come at this with a different set of starting perceptions, and to say that they're there as part of the implementation. I was going to avoid the word stylistic, but in a sense, they're there because of a stylistic limitation at the moment. They're not a structural intent, but it's no harm to be able to see things. And I think what we tend to, and this is a problem we constantly face, to make things look nice. So for instance, you have anchor text in hypertext or in a web hypertext because it's easier to read the article with links rather than just literally have the whole link, which these days is often very long, rammed into the text because your eye finds it hard to scroll to go past that. But we need to be mindful as there's always this assumption that, oh well, the system knows. That may be true in some cases, but it's not always the case. So it's something we need to look at. So it's keeping the fidelity of those links as we move between environments.
Yeah. Okay, I have a few things to do. I think that was very productive. How about I send you the original documents?
Yeah, you're going to send me. So you're going to send me 1.2. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to say mark edit.
Actually, yeah. If you email it to me, and then it won't just be busy gumming up our messages thing. I know I'm terribly bad.
I'm not going to email it to you. It's very big.
Oh right. So I just do a download reference through messages, or you're going to link it to me.
It's 730 megabytes.
Oh, okay, fine.
It'll be. I'm putting it on Dropbox compressed as 167.
Yeah, just give me down. Oh, that's fine. No, sorry. Dropbox download link. That's fine. It's all on broadband here. That's not an issue.
Yeah, because it keeps all the images in different sizes and all that. I'll send that to you when it's uploaded, and then maybe we meet a little bit later today if that's cool.
Yep, I'll take a look. I'll take a look through. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I'm available to speak to all day if there's any whatevers.
That's fine. The only thing I've got to do some exercise. I've got a tiny bit of shopping, and apart from that, I can get on this. Well, I'll do that while I'm uploading all the new tin box stuff as well.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later, Mark.
Cool.
Glad you're back. Bye.
Take care.